What if a single city could decide the fate of an entire war? In the summer of 1942, deep inside the Soviet Union, a battle began that would become one of the bloodiest and most important conflicts in human history. The city was Stalingrad, a place of factories, workers, and strategic importance along the Volga River. What started as another German offensive soon turned into a brutal struggle for survival, where soldiers fought for every street, every building, and sometimes every room. Over the next several months, hundreds of thousands of lives would be lost, armies would be trapped, and the course of World War II would be changed forever. This is the story of the Battle of Stalingrad, the turning point of the Eastern Front, and one of the greatest battles ever fought. The summer of 1942 found Nazi Germany still deep inside Soviet territory, but Adolf Hitler knew that time was not on his side. The failure to capture Moscow had forced a new strategy, one focused on the resource-rich south of the Soviet Union. Germany launched Operation Case Blue, a massive offensive aimed at seizing oil fields in the Caucasus and cutting Soviet supply routes along the Volga River. Among the cities standing in the path of this advance was Stalingrad, an industrial center stretching along the banks of the Volga. To Hitler, capturing the city would protect the northern flank of his southern campaign and deliver a powerful symbolic blow because it carried the name of Joseph Stalin. What began as a strategic objective would soon become one of the most important battles in human history. As German forces advanced across the vast Soviet steppe, they appeared unstoppable. Town after town fell, and Soviet armies were pushed back. By August 1942, the German Sixth Army was approaching Stalingrad. Before ground troops even entered the city, the German Air Force launched devastating bombing raids. Entire neighborhoods were reduced to rubble. Factories were shattered, and fires raged across the skyline. Tens of thousands of civilians were killed. Yet the destruction had an unexpected consequence. Instead of creating an easy path for the attackers, the ruins transformed Stalingrad into a maze of shattered buildings, collapsed walls, and defensive positions that would favor the defenders. When German troops finally entered the city in September, they expected victory to come quickly. Instead, they encountered fierce resistance. Soviet soldiers, workers, and civilians fought desperately to hold their ground. Under orders that emphasized holding the city at all costs, Soviet defenders refused to retreat. Every street became a battlefield. Every building became a fortress. The battle quickly turned into brutal, close-quarters combat, where soldiers often fought only a few meters apart. Artillery, tanks, and aircraft became less effective in the crowded ruins, forcing both sides into deadly house-to-house fighting. One of the most fiercely contested locations was Mamayev Kurgan, a hill overlooking much of the city. Control of the hill changed hands repeatedly as both sides launched relentless attacks. The ground became so saturated with shell fragments and blood that grass struggled to grow there long after the war. Nearby, another symbol of resistance emerged. A small apartment building, later known as Pavlov's house, was transformed into a fortress by Soviet defenders. For months, they resisted repeated German assaults, demonstrating how even a single building could influence the battle. As the struggle intensified, the city's giant factories became the center of the fighting. The Red October factory, the Barikati factory, and the tractor factory witnessed some of the most savage combat of the entire war. Soldiers fought among machinery, steel beams, workshops, and assembly lines. Entire battalions were committed to capturing individual factory buildings. Control of a room, a staircase, or a corridor could determine success or failure. German commanders gradually gained ground, but every advance came at a terrible cost. Throughout these desperate months, the Volga River remained the city's lifeline. Soviet boats crossed day and night, carrying reinforcements, food, ammunition, and medical supplies into the city while evacuating wounded soldiers and civilians. German artillery and aircraft constantly threatened these crossings, yet they continued. As long as the Volga remained open, Stalingrad could resist. Behind the scenes, Soviet commanders were planning something far larger than the defense of a single city. By November 1942, the German Sixth Army was deeply committed inside Stalingrad. Although German forces controlled much of the city, their flanks were protected by Romanian, Hungarian, and Italian units that were less equipped to withstand a major assault. Soviet commanders recognized this weakness and prepared a massive counteroffensive known as Operation Uranus. On November 19th, Soviet forces attacked from the north and south simultaneously. The assault shattered the Axis defenses guarding the flanks. Within days, the Soviet spearheads met west of Stalingrad, near Kalach, surrounding more than 250,000 Axis soldiers. The encirclement stunned the German command. Many officers urged an immediate breakout while there was still time. However, Hitler refused. Convinced that the Sixth Army could hold its position and be supplied by air, he ordered the troops to remain where they were. The German Air Force promised to deliver the supplies necessary to sustain the trapped army. But the reality was far different. Weather conditions, Soviet resistance, and insufficient transport aircraft made the mission impossible. The surrounded soldiers received only a fraction of the food, fuel, ammunition, and medical supplies they required. As winter tightened its grip on the battlefield, conditions inside the pocket deteriorated rapidly. Temperatures plunged far below freezing. Soldiers suffered from hunger, frostbite, disease, and exhaustion. Horses were slaughtered for food. Fuel shortages left vehicles abandoned. Medical facilities became overwhelmed. Despite these hardships, Hitler continued to insist that the Sixth Army hold its ground. In December 1942, Germany launched Operation Winterstorm, a major attempt to rescue the trapped army. German armored forces advanced towards Stalingrad, and at one point came within striking distance of the pocket. Hope briefly returned among the surrounded troops. Yet the Soviet Union responded with overwhelming force. Fresh Soviet offensives threatened the relief force and endangered German positions elsewhere. The rescue operations stalled and eventually withdrew. The Sixth Army remained trapped. The failure of the relief effort marked a turning point. Soviet forces steadily tightened their grip around the pocket. One defensive position after another fell. The trapped army shrank into an ever smaller area of resistance. Supplies continued to decline, and morale collapsed. Yet pockets of fierce resistance remained. Soldiers fought not only against Soviet attacks, but also against starvation and the brutal Russian winter. By January 1943, the situation had become hopeless. Soviet commanders launched Operation Ring, a final offensive designed to destroy the surrounded forces. Massive artillery bombardments shattered German defenses. Soviet troops advanced methodically, splitting the pocket into smaller sections. Communication broke down. Organized resistance became increasingly difficult. German units that had once conquered much of Europe now struggled simply to survive another day. As Soviet forces closed in on the center of Stalingrad, Hitler promoted General Friedrich Paulus to the rank of Field Marshal. No German field marshal had ever surrendered, and many believed the promotion was intended to encourage him to fight to the end. But the reality on the ground could no longer be ignored. The Sixth Army was starving, freezing, and collapsing. On January 31, 1943, Paulus surrendered the southern pocket. A few days later, the remaining German forces in the north also surrendered. The Battle of Stalingrad ended in early February 1943, after months of relentless combat. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers and civilians had been killed, wounded, or captured. The German Sixth Army, once among the most powerful formations in the world, had been destroyed. More importantly, the battle shattered the image of German invincibility. From that point forward, the strategic initiative on the Eastern Front passed to the Soviet Union. Germany would never fully recover from the losses suffered at Stalingrad. The significance of the battle extended far beyond the ruins of the city. Stalingrad demonstrated the limits of German expansion, strengthened Allied confidence around the world, and inspired resistance against Nazi Germany. It proved that even the strongest armies could be defeated through determination, sacrifice, and strategic planning. Historians widely regard Stalingrad as the turning point of the Eastern Front and one of the decisive battles of World War II. The shattered city on the Volga became a symbol of resilience and endurance, reminding future generations that the course of history can change through the courage of those who refuse to give up when everything seems lost.